Welcome, everyone. My name is Heather Blicker, and I'm the director of the Community College Consortium for OER. And we're very happy to have this webinar today, Doers, Advancing OER for All Through Practical Tools. And I'd like to ask our two presenters to introduce themselves.
Debbie, go ahead.
Oh, sure. Sorry. So my name's Debbie Baker. I am the OER coordinator for the Maricopa Community Colleges in Phoenix, Arizona. I am also the vice chair for the DOERS organization.
Hi, everyone. My name is Liliana Diaz-Valarujan, and I am the Senior Director of Student Success and P20 Alignment at the Colorado Department of Higher Education, as well as the lead for the Advancing OER for All working group for Doers.
Great. Welcome to you both. Very briefly, because I know our time is short here, I just want to share just a little bit about CCC OER. It's a community of practice and a regional node of Open Education Global. And members are from institutions and organizations that represent millions of students across North America. And we do this work through webinars. We have a community listserv that includes community colleges, but also spans across all levels of institutions in the globe. I hope you'll consider being a part of the community, whether you're at a community college or not. And you know, it's been a busy OE week, but like we were mentioning earlier, OE week sometimes spans a lot longer for some of us. We have some upcoming CCC OER events that are on the OE week website, and I just wanted to highlight those. Thank you, Debbie, for putting those in the chat. And we've also had some really amazing presentations starting in February, and we don't have those archived quite yet on our website, but they will be soon. Until then, we're putting those links in the chat if you'd like to check out the recording. And with that, I will turn it over to Liliana and Debbie, and we'll learn more about this topic. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Well, welcome to Advancing OER for All Through Practical Tools. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit about who or what is Doers, as well as the tool that we have developed as part of a formerly known as the Equity Working Group, which is now Advancing OER for All Working Group, that put together the Equity Through OER rubric, which we piloted in 2022, 2023 with 6 institutions. And we're going to share some of those findings and learnings from that pilot program and how we're using those results to update the rubric to a 2.0, as well as some information about being able to pilot the 2.0 version in 2026. And I have Debbie here, who is fantastic, not only because she is the chair of Doers or a vice chair of Doers and part of the Advancing for All working group, but she also was a grantee of the 1.0 cohort that piloted the Equity Through OER rubric. So she'll be able to share some of her experiences piloting this program. So first of all, who are Doers? If you're not familiar for Doers, an acronym, just like higher education, we love our acronyms. It's Driving OER Sustainability for Student Success, which is a collaborative of 39 public higher education systems that are statewide and province-wide. So this organization consists of members from the United States as well as Canada. And we're committed to student success by promoting free, customizable, open educational resources. And we are fairly new organization. We were launched in 2018. And we really work together as a collaborative to implement, scale, and sustain not just OER, but open education by advancing research and policy and sharing tools and learnings and showing how open education can foster student success. So as you can see, our membership is all across the United States and some of the provinces in Canada. And we're hoping to expand that membership. And if your system in your state is not a member, please connect with us. We'd love for you to become involved in this amazing organization. And it's free of cost to folks. So what do we do? So the DOERS organization has three main working groups: research, advancing, and innovation. So today you're going to hear from the advancing working group, which again has developed this tool that we're in the midst of updating. We have the innovation tool, which currently are tackling and looking at open education and the intersection of artificial intelligence, AI. And I know that they're exploring conversations on workforce and open education and how they tie in together, which is very exciting. And then for research, looking at different modes or of infrastructure that could support continued development of open education initiatives. So we're all doing phenomenal work, all volunteer driven, of folks that are passionate about open education at a system level. So how to join, if you're interested in joining, you is open to all public higher education systems engaging in large-scale open education and committing to advancing open education. And these memberships are available to statewide and province-wide open education initiatives. So if you are at your college or university system, or you could represent your system, or if you work at, let's say, a state agency level, we definitely invite you to send out some information or request information at info@doers3.org. So I know I spoke a little bit about the tool that we piloted in 2022 and 2023, which was the OER Equity Blueprint, a tool for evaluating and improving equity in OER. So just kind of what this was, it was a self-assessment that institutions can use to really understand where they have gaps in the open education work that they do, as well as opportunities for improvement, or areas that they might not have considered to engage in open education within facets of their institution. And as I go through the presentation, I'll explain this a little bit more clearer so you get a little bit more in-depth understanding. Who is it designed for? It really is designed for higher education practitioners, administrators, and policymakers. And you'll see examples of this in a subsequent slide. And why? Why did we think this was important? So we, as a group that was formerly known as the Equity Working Group, we understand that equity doesn't happen without intention and action, and quality OER cannot exist without equity. And how did we go about this? So we engaged with the rubric to assess how institutions and units in each area develop and plan for action as it relates to open education through an equity lens. So knowing that we used theoretical and research foundations to develop the rubric, and then we put out a call for case studies as well as we were developing this rubric. So it has these three components, which you can find on our website if you wanted to jump into more depth as to what were the theoretical and research foundations that were utilized to develop the rubric, to access the rubric itself, and then the case studies from many institutions across the country that have actually used the rubric to assess where there's gaps and opportunities within their institutions, within their systems, where they can advance open education. Excuse me. So the rubric has categories and dimensions. And so we use three broad organizational categories. And within these categories, there's different dimensions. And so for here, the main components of the rubric are students, practitioners, and leadership. So those are the organizational categories that you will find within this rubric. Within that rubric, you'll see the several the dimensions, which are in the bullet points. So for example, if we're looking at practitioners, one of the dimensions is equity-centered instruction, pedagogy, and content. Another one is multiple dimensions of infrastructure, which includes, IT support, course markings, staff support, bookstores. And this will be a little different for students. So for students, we're looking at is their equitable availability of OER, what's the student awareness of OER on their campus or at their institution, their system. What is the access points for students to have to this technology, or technology where they can access open resources? And for leadership, they're going to care a little bit about very different things based on their job description. So what are the things that are impactful for this demographic of folks that are institutions and systems? And for them, definitely is going to be ongoing assessment and continuous improvement to really understand, okay, are there professional development opportunities for faculty and staff? Are there policies? Is there capacity in the form of staffing? Are there instructor incentives for them to do this work? We understand that recognition, not just faculty promotion and tenure, but also being able to maybe do a course buyout or a mini grant to be able to support this work. Is this open education initiatives on the campus tied to larger system goals and priorities in the strategic plan or in the budgeting process? So this blueprint really helps you identify where open education can and does engage with other facets of your institution that you might not have at the forefront, especially if we're in our own like jobs, right? If you're a librarian, you're going to be working on things that are relevant to your scope of work versus if you're faculty versus if you're a dean. And sometimes we're not really privy to some of those areas and responsibilities and don't understand fully how open education can really tie into some of those job responsibilities outside of our own scope of work. So this rubric really helps you highlight where there are intersections that might be invisible to us based on our, limited scope of areas of work as well. And Debbie, please feel free to jump in on any slide and add more or So within the rubric, you'll find a scale of adoption. So as we saw, we have the organizational category, students, practitioners, leadership, as well as the several dimensions, which are in those bullet points. And then within the scale, you'll see whether when you're looking at the rubric, if you're looking at a certain category, and the next slide will show you what those look like, whether that section hasn't paid any attention to OER or open education. There's nothing present in that space, all the way to established, where your unit or your institution as a whole has a foundation or infrastructure in place that has a comprehensive plan that will assess and provide an action plan and a plan for continuous improvement as it relates to open education in that particular dimension, as well as that category. We understand that not everyone is established. Some folks are just starting their work, and we want to recognize that within this scale because that's important, right? It's not we go from 0 to 60, it's an incremental progress. And this is where I say there's opportunities for continued improvement, as well as identifying where you might not have anything present, but there's opportunities to begin that work and then move into that beginning category or scale of adoption. And then once you're a little more mature in there, move into merging. So Debbie, I don't know if you want to add things here, or maybe the next slide might help.
Yeah, I'm going to wait till you start talking about the pilot program.
Okay, sounds good. So this is an example of one section of the rubric, or one little piece of the rubric. So this is the student category. So remember that category, we had students, practitioners, and leadership. So this is the student category. And you can see here in the scale, you'll see not present, beginning, emerging, and established for example, access to technology. Do students have access to broadband and devices and services that will give them the access they need to these open resources? So if you're just starting this work, you might be in the not present category or scale. Access to technology, not considered as part of OER use and or planning. So let's say you're looking at, okay, your IT infrastructure to make sure that students have access to open educational resources or other materials. And you're talking to your IT department because you know students don't have access to broadband if you're in a rural community, or they might not have access to computers. Well, this can help you understand where you are and where it gives you kind of a little direction as to where to go and to be able to make that pitch. Okay, we want to begin this work. Do we have access to broadband? Do students have access to devices and services that are considered part of OER? Perfect, great. The next step that you want to go to, maybe you want to become emerging, you want to look at maybe alternative ways that students can access open resources without the impediments of technology. And then your 10-year long-term plan is to maybe be in the established category where you actually have a comprehensive plan to provide open education resources in a variety of modalities that are not bound to just one type of technology, so students all across the board have access. So this gives you an example of that scale and how it can help you really identify where you are and where there's opportunities for growth. All right, so I'm going to do a little quick intro here to the pilot program for the Equity Through OER rubric that we launched in 2022. We piloted it with 6 institutions, and you can see the list here. We had a very diverse group of folks, which was very fantastic. Everything from very large community colleges to community college system to, liberal arts college to, a teacher college. So definitely lots of diversity in there. Institutions received $10,000 to pilot the year-long program. Systems received $14,000. And some of the materials that they had to develop as part of the pilot were a project description of what they were going to do, as well as an action plan. And then as well to conduct a gap analysis using the rubric. So as you can tell, you could have identified where there's gaps in some of the things that you're doing, as well as where there's opportunities for growth, write a case study, then a final report. And all of these folks, institutions were supported by 2 mentors who were able to answer questions, engage in peer learning and thought partnership. And grantees also attended the DOERS in-person convening to connect with other grantees and larger membership. So with that, I don't know if Debbie, you want to jump in and provide your perspective coming from Maricopa Community Colleges.
Sure, thank you. So Maricopa Community Colleges in Arizona, we were the system that received a grant in, what did you say, 2023?
Mm-hmm.
It's all a big blur in my head. And I see a lot of familiar names and faces on this call. So you may know this about me, but I have a lot of trouble like limiting myself sometimes. And we didn't read the fine print, or I didn't read the fine print in the grant program. And so not only did we apply this to the entire system, but we did the entire rubric and looked at across all of the categories and dimensions across the system. And it was an amazing experience, very much a self-study process, although we didn't intend it that way. Our program, Maricopa's program, Open Education Program, is pretty well established at that point. It was just about 10 years old. And so we were very excited to have the opportunity to do this work. And we learned a lot about what we were doing and what we weren't doing. And actually, if you can would you bounce back to the slide with the student one before that? Yes, the student category. So one of the things I will call attention to here that we learned, we took the rubric and we turned it into a survey so that we could push that survey out across the system to our faculty and staff that have been doing open education work across the last 10 years. And got some great findings, learned a lot of how they were perceiving this work. One of the things I really want to point to here is in the availability of OER line there, 1.1, the emerging category where in the center it says OER are available online and OER available offline through a limited printing process. And we asked a question about whether OER was available online, offline, or both. And we had about 50% of our respondents say it was only online. And so that was very telling to us because we thought we had done a good job over the last 10 years of explaining that this was available in both spaces, online and offline. So things like that just really made us more aware of what was happening in our system. The perception was across our system. That's an excellent question about our response rate, and I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to look that one up because it's been a little bit since I had those figures in front of me. But I will look it up just as soon as I turn this back over to Liliana. I do want to say, and you can go forward now in the slides. that because we did a survey and instead of a focus group with our faculty and our staff, we ended up leveraging the funds from the grant really for implementing changes as a result of the study. And so what we ended up doing is designing a review process for the materials that our faculty had, the OER materials that our faculty had developed in Pressbooks, and having them conduct what we called an equity review of those materials. So we learned that in addition to the fact that our folks across the colleges were not as aware as we thought they were about whether the materials were available online and offline. We also learned that we really felt that there needed to be a lot more instructional design called out in the rubric, places where we really felt like the rubric didn't go far enough in pushing us to improve the quality of our materials. Expanding student voice and engagement in the rubric. We really learned that additionally, we learned that there were a lot more opportunities for internal partnerships with senior faculty and staff and the rubric. And that while we thought we understood what we were talking about, our upper leadership didn't necessarily have the same understanding. And that was based, we think, on the fact that we'd had those conversations with leadership and then leadership changed, and we didn't go back and have the same conversations again. So yeah, go ahead, Liliana.
Oh, I have a little colleague home from school, so you might hear her in the background. So yeah, so it's really fantastic that we got to learn from all the grantees. And what we're doing now is that we are now in the middle of updating the rubric to a 2.0 version that is more expansive and meets the broad needs of various state contexts. So you might have noticed that I keep referencing the formerly known as the Equity Working Group. We had many members in our group mention that just due to the political climate in their state, they might not actually be able to engage with this tool because of the word equity. And so what we have done as a group is that in this 2.0 version, we're trying to become more inclusive of how we talk about equity in different ways that are more expansive to include like all students, and how do we support the success of all students regardless of background. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at revamping within the rubric, as well as we're also revamping the mentorship component of the rubric. We got a lot of feedback. It was something that was very well loved by grantees, but we can definitely clean it up and provide more of a structure to enhance that mentorship component. As well as we will be putting out a call for folks to pilot the 2.0 rubric come mid-July 2025 for a launch of 2026. So if you're interested in doing this work, remember, you don't have to do the whole rubric, but you could focus on one of the categories of the rubric. And we're going to be opening that up in mid-July. So look for a call for proposals or for participants. And there will be an application review, and we'll be launching a 2.0 cohort in January 2026. So you can look at the 1.0 version of the rubric on the DOERS website. So if you go to DOERS3.org, you go under projects, you'll find OER Equity Blueprint and Rubric, and you can interact with the case studies. You can learn from what the institutions learned through the 1.0 pilot program. And if you have questions, please reach out. So this is a 30-minute session. We have a couple minutes open for questions, which we'd love to interact with you and answer anything that you might have questions for us.
Just to answer the earlier question about our response rate, we had 96 responses, and we sent the survey out. We pushed it out through the colleges to their the folks at the colleges that do the OER work, so I'm not entirely sure how far it went, like how many people got the survey, but we did have 90 participated. Amy has her hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for this great presentation. It's always great to follow along with this group's work. I am excited to share the opportunity with my folks in Oregon, but summer is pretty tricky because a lot of people are off contract and decision makers are, also going on vacation here and there. And so if there could be like a pre-announcement before the end of spring term so that folks who are interested know to watch for it in July, that would help me get participants in Oregon.
So that's part of the reason we're doing this session as well, to get the word out that this opportunity will be, and we are working on marketing materials and updating those, and they'll be out soon, early this spring. As well as the application period will be open for, I think, 2-3 months. And so the call will go out July 1st or July 15th, it'll open, but it won't close until a couple months after. So folks have time to develop their applications. But yes, Amy, we'll send out communication as soon as it's ready. Other questions?
I did have a request to share the survey that we used. I'm happy to share that. If with anybody who's interested, if you could just drop your email in the chat, because I am unprepared for school today and do not have it open on my computer. Thank you.
Thanks, Shauna. Yeah, we're excited to be updating that as we speak, pretty much.
Awesome. Thank you. I will send that survey out to you later today.
And I do want to plug in, since we have 30 seconds, we are looking at providing parameters if you wanted to translate this survey or this rubric into other languages, for example, Spanish or French. We do have a Canadian member on our team that's very immersed in language, and she's providing kind of a framework for how do you go about translating this resource into another language. So for those of you that maybe English isn't the preferred language for this rubric. All right.
We're just about at time. I want to thank both Liliana and Debbie for presenting on this topic. And yeah, and we'll look forward to hearing more about this development in the future.
Well, thank you for the time.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of Open Ed Week.
Yes.